The next tool that we're going to be using is the Select tool. In Alteryx, the Select tool lets you modify some information about columns in order to specify more details about how they are stored, or change their name, or say that there's some data in there that you just aren't interested in when that data can be divided neatly along columns. So, in order to add the Select tool, we will click it from our Favorites bar or the Preparation bar, and we will drag it down. You'll notice that a dotted line is appearing to connect these two tools. Alteryx will do its best to try and figure out, hey, you probably want a connection here. But if you put it in some zany place, Alteryx can't figure it out. That will create a little line right here. And if Alteryx had not done so, or if you want to delete a line, if Alteryx had not done so, you can click on an arrow and drag it from one tool into another. And let me just get this straight for my own sanity. Now, within our Select tool, we have what the names of the columns are, what data type Alteryx inferred they were, and what size the data types are. In the case of variable length strings, which is what we have here, this is a string with up to 254 different characters in it. Now, for name, that seems like a pretty reasonable assumption to make. There aren't going to be a lot of names that are longer than 254 characters, but on the other hand, we know that not all of them will be near that high end. Most of them will be shorter than that. Because it'll change a lot, it's best to use a variable width string. Next, we have year. While year can be stored as a string, that just lets us have the characters for the numbers 1, 8, 8, and 4 inside a field. More useful to us would be to store this as some sort of integer, or at least some kind of number. I'm going to select int16 for this. Int16 allows us to store numbers without a decimal. That's what the int means. And 16 means that it allows 16 bits of precision. The size is labeled as 2 because it's 2 bytes. That's just some technical computing stuff. There's 8 bits to a byte. Not big or scary. The important thing is int16 lets us get to some numbers that are going to be larger than what our range will actually be for years. Now, for female and male, we know that these are counts of the number of babies born in a given year. This is another number that we want an integer for. However, when running through this data earlier, I saw a bunch of conversion errors when I tried with int16. So, I'm trying the next step up, int32. When you're playing around with data, you may not know exactly what the best number to pick is for the size. Appendix D of our Alteryx book has our field names, and in that has the minimum and maximum numbers Alteryx can store for those. You can go ahead and look it up in the table if you think you have a reasonable idea of what range your data will have. Or you can just play around, starting big and going small, or starting small and going large. As a guy who works a lot with databases, I try and find out what the smallest thing I can get away with is, and int32 happens to be the case for this data set. Now we have a filter that will slightly change our input data and turn it into something more useful. In the next video, I will show you how to use the Browse tool in order to verify that it is in fact useful and that you didn't make a mistake along the way. It's very important when we are working on this sort of thing to make sure that we check what we're doing so that we don't wind up with an end product that isn't what we want, but have done 30 things since then so we aren't sure what's wrong.